As we experience the knowledge of humankind increasing exponentially, we live in the hope that with this knowledge will come wisdom in the same measure, so that humankind can live in harmony with all creation. But it does not always seem to follow that knowledge and wisdom, true wisdom, walk hand in hand through the world in today's. But it does not always seem to follow that knowledge and wisdom, true wisdom, walk hand in hand through the world today. In fact, sometimes the opposite seems to be the case. Why is it that we strive for more and greater knowledge, and yet our longing for true inner wisdom remains unfulfilled? How can we possibly develop the truly spiritual consciousness necessary for this inner wisdom if we do not understand and experience the distinction between knowledge and wisdom? And where is wisdom to be found? Is it from the same source that ordinary daily knowledge comes from? Or is it from an inner, deeper source?
Dear friends, we would like to start the presentation by breaking down the two elements within today's talk title. So let's start with the word wisdom. Wisdom is usually attributed to someone using their knowledge in the right way. Wisdom develops from experience and reflection on life and relates to common sense. The Golden Rosy Cross views wisdom as consciously existing in harmony with the whole, in oneness. We could call it higher reason or spiritually inspired wisdom, and it originates from the awakening spirit spark atom within us, or the rose of the heart, as it's called in the Rosicrucians. This spark of the spirit connects us with the source of the creation, right at the very center of the human being system. As the ego's resistance to the process lessens and we are able to fully serve the spirit spark, a connection with the spirit begins to become discernible as a guiding influence. After entering this process, the path of inner purification, we can leave behind all that is not essential, everything that forms a burden on our spiritual path. This new consciousness enables the candidates to experience spiritual truth within themselves, free from outside influences. Real wisdom then enables unity with all creation. This oneness is the meaning of true love.
The second element of the title, enlightenment, clearly finds its root in the word light and can generally indicate intellectual clarification, for instance, or literally lighting up an area. From a spiritual point of view, it relates to divine radiations illuminating our darkness or unconscious behaviors and guiding our practices via the spirit spark atom. This is again a process where the human beings who make space in their lives for such healing and calming radiations experience the ego as diminishing factor in their daily behavior. Such higher electromagnetic vibrations urge us on the pathway of spiritual self-knowledge and self-discovery, to open ourselves to the light, and so that the light, and not ourselves, can transform our consciousness towards inner enlightenment. This is a process of detachment from the persistent interplay of polarities, of influences, and contrasting forces that dominate the nature of life and death. In contrast, it is possible, friends, to find in our lives a direct connection with the Absolute. Then a sense of oneness will follow, true unity with the universe. Initiates such as the Buddha, Lao Tzu, Mani, and many others throughout history reached the true knowledge of reality by being enlightened by the divine radiations. So again, here we'd like to state very clearly that this is not a process reserved for distant historical figures or great men. No, friends, this is a path of inner transformation to which we are all called here and now. But let's go a bit deeper into this process. This is not like switching on a light bulb in our room and seeing the entire space illuminated. As we said, this is a process where we receive inner insight or illumination regarding how to transform our lives so that we may progress towards receiving unified consciousness, enlightenment. On the practical daily level of our lives, to the extent that we give more and more time and space within ourselves to the one thing necessary, that is, to the manifestation of the Spirit within ourselves, we are expanding the radius of action of these suggestions, which later on become intuition. Enlightenment takes place little by little. It must happen gradually, and it is not about greedily asking for light for ourselves, but about being prepared to see and act upon what the light can show us, even when it may be uncomfortable to accept the psychic weakness which we may have spent time concealing. For example, when a prisoner is in a dungeon and does not have the possibility of receiving sunlight for a long time, and perhaps remains in the dark, well, his retina becomes atrophied. And when he has the possibility of leaving the dungeon and going outside, he cannot open his eyes directly, and not all of a sudden. Otherwise, he would be blinded by the light.
So, an aspect of this path, of this process, is what we have called purification, making ourselves pure, ready, giving a space to the suggestions, to the spirit principle within our hearts, so that we can receive gradual personal assistance that we will readily recognize as illumination, which culminates as spiritual intuition. Given that, we apply ourselves with due diligence to the unfolding path of inward self-discovery. As we cooperate with these suggestions, these radiations, we are guided towards the next step on the path through each of its stages. The path is not a straight line, it is a spiral, where you will continually come back to things you thought you understood and see deeper truths about yourself and your surrounding world and circumstances. Initially, when we are ready for this spiritual process, the light sends its radiations to awaken a glimmer of consciousness in the spirit spark atom or rose of the heart. We then become a spiritual seeker, and through the law of resonance, we attract people, books, situations which align with our seeking. If we observe our thoughts, feelings, and actions, depending on the orientation of our consciousness, we may give space to the rose of the heart regarding our perceptions and experiences. Our life, before and also while seeking this spiritual process, this unfolding path of deeper and deeper self-recognition, can be compared to living in a dungeon of unconsciousness gloom, where we do not understand what it is that causes our cycles of brief pleasures and returning suffering. We often react robotically, and following our thoughts and will often cause harm to others and ourselves through speech and action. This process, dear friends, is deeply rooted in our life. The relationships that shape it, the experiences that we face, and that, if we pay attention, teach us about ourselves and about what is essential. It's from the nitty-gritty of life that through a deep orientation we can allow for the transformation of our consciousness. If we give space to the spirit spark, the rose of the heart, and follow it daily, we will gain more consciousness and become aware of all that we call me, but are actually not the real you. Our character traits, our fears, our worries, our karmic ties, we gain self-knowledge in a profound way. We obtain self-knowledge. As the divine light illuminates us, we are symbolically climbing a mountain, while the egocentric self is decreasing. Ultimately, at the peak of this symbolic mountain, we find the temple of the spirit, initiation. There, the egocentric self has no place. There is a new beginning, an entirely new consciousness that is not an expansion of our present earth-bound consciousness. This new state is a profound recognition and service to a consciousness which has formed its link to the oneness or true love.
Golden Rose Cross recognizes that this path, this process, is possible only through the contact with the spirit spark within. We cannot realize anything lasting other than through the necessary spiritually enlightening practices and conscious dedication, which our present consciousness, with all its cultural and material ties, is unable to grasp, but which can be transformed sufficiently through undergoing such process. Albert Einstein stated that we cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. We may go through the path of purification supported by the Golden Rosy Cross, which offers a pure field of action and an alchemical laboratory where the radiations which are in contact with the divine energy forces are transformed and can reach us according to our own vibrational state of consciousness. With a positive response, this enables a change in our personality and ultimately the complete transformation of consciousness, or transfiguration. So, as our thoughts, feelings, and actions are directed towards cooperating with the rose of the heart, illumination, and ultimately absolute wisdom are born in our consciousness. This orientation will cause a change in the energy generated by the three centers of the consciousness in us, which are the head, where our thinking faculty can be elevated by the light to true wisdom, the heart, which becomes the seat of true universal love, and the pelvic area, the center of action, which, directed by love and wisdom, can generate the pure liberating deed. This new divine consciousness, being present in sufficient spiritual seekers, can elevate the world and humanity. Again, this path is for everyone. Every person who resonates with this divine message may contribute to the elevation of mankind and the planet with inner wisdom and enlightenment by daily directing themselves inwardly towards the source of light within, the spirit spark atom in the heart.